Peter,
Good.
hi, nice to see you. I want to take you up on your suggestion that we have a site visit sometime, Peter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'd love to see what you've been doing with the kids, and it's a great success. It's just wonderful.
We've been so delighted that everything's working and the student classes this year are really engaged.
Oh
It's
yeah,
different every year. The project is in a different place each time
right.
around. But yeah, we're having a great time.
Oh, it's phenomenal, and just keeps giving. Keeps carrying over, no matter what happens. But I mean, and plus it's still perking along. It's still there. I think I'll push the button, and actually. I'll take this opportunity to introduce you to Rob Scott. Rob, this is Peter. He's one of the masterminds on the RamSat. So Rob's one of our group, Peter. That's working toward a TauSat, but we're getting it together. I'll tell you about more. But
Yeah.
Rob's our one of our main guys.
All right.
So Rob, do you hear? I don't know if you've got communications going or not. Yeah, maybe.
Oh yeah, no, I hear you fine. Sorry, I was being quiet because you were speaking. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Rob.
Okay, guys, I'll be doing the other folks. Just open the gate.
Yeah, I don't think David hasn't seen these.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
So these are the TauSat proto boards. Basically, they're just prototyping boards to be able to do experimenting, and they work exactly the way you think they do. And they've got some surface mount footprints to put stuff on. So
Yeah, we've got other types too that are kind of nice, Peter.
yeah, the other ones are ordered. They're coming in hopefully within the next week or two. The what's called the Raspberry Pi proto boards.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that sounds great. I look forward. Are we going to have a chance this evening to hear more about that?
We'll do another program on it. We'll tell you more about it. We can hint about it, but we've done a lot more than it sounds, because we've done maybe 8 or 10 balloon launches, and we've actually made a science package that we want to put on our satellite. Kind of a first cut of it. We've actually flown a drone. So to tell you more about that.
Yeah, there's the Rev 2 of the science package. I just got to assemble it.
That's right. Yeah, it's a 2-channel receiver. So we want to receive VLF signals that don't make it through the ionosphere and open up for amateurs, scientists, radio astronomers. The really interesting world are the VLF signals that we cannot do radio astronomy with them from the Earth.
Huh.
So that's kind of where we're headed. What we got to do is have a little more time than usual tonight. I think there'll be more questions. Rob usually gives us Astrotech or Astro Geek, depending on which hat he wears, some new astronomy stuff. And he said he didn't think he would do that tonight. So we may go a bit long in the questions. The other thing we usually do is we have an astrophotography session at the end if anyone has any new photos. So we can. It's kind of good because we've got a team giving the presentation, so everybody has a chance, I think. So we've got some of our officers on. I guess I'll turn it over to Don. Do you have anything you want to add before we get started?
Yeah, I'll just briefly introduce Todd. Todd is an instructor at Oak Ridge's Robertsville Middle School, and as many of us know, he got the RamSat project started there, and I gather he's been there probably at least 20 years or so. My first experience was our daughter Kate went to school there and was involved with the technology club that he led, and I know there was a lot of excitement about that among the kids, so that was a big hit. He's been leading middle school students for years in a class he calls Engineering by Design, which has received accolades for its innovation in STEM. And he now divides his time between the middle and the high schools and is developing a curriculum from the RamSat project that will eventually be shared with other schools to use. And so with that, I turn it over to Todd, and I hope you'll also introduce the other mentors that are involved here on this presentation.
Okay, thanks everybody. Like I said, my name is Todd Levacy. I have been with Oak Ridge Schools since 1999. Started in 1985 over in Knoxville. It's been a really big pleasure of mine to work, with Oak Ridge Schools. It's just so much, I don't know, it's so much more of a professional environment than I've experienced in other places, and we're supported so well. So I always like to give a shout out to my schools. Peter Thornton, Dr. Peter Thornton. He's our lead technical mentor. He'll be talking tonight. Ian Gothert. He's one of our coders. He also works the lab with Peter. David Andrews. He's all our hero because he's retired and just getting to play and do what he wants to do. I see Jim Bogart is here. He's in the same boat. I don't know who all is on here.
Hey, Jim.
Jim has been a pleasure. He does great with the kids. David, all these guys come in and work with our kids regularly. Did I miss anybody? All right. We do have Melissa Dumas and Ed Dumas and some other mentors that have helped us for over a long period of time. It's just been an amazing experience. And I guess, can I share my screen? I'm just going to give a really quick overview of this project. It actually started as an enrichment class with no intention of actually launching a satellite. Christmas of 2014, a friend of mine, Dr. Patrick Hall, I graduated in 81. Patrick graduated from 92 from Oak Ridge High School. We have common friends, go to the same church, and he works for Marshall Space Flight Center. And between services, he said, Todd, with all your engineering stuff you do, we ought to do some kind of project together. And I said, Patrick, I would love to do that. I have nowhere in my schedule to fit another class period. I'm not really pushing out everything I need to as is, but thank you for the offer. Sometime in late January of 2015, my then principal, Bruce Lay, came to me and said, hey, Todd, we're going to add an additional class period to the school, and we're going to use mostly for remediation, but we're going to have kids at and above grade level. And that's kind of where my class is with the kids anyway. He said, I want you to teach one of the enrichment classes. He said, what do you think? And I said, you got any ideas? And I said, oh yeah, got an idea. Can I take a van to Marshall Space Flight Center? And he said, absolutely, go ahead. So I went down, and I have a little video. I'm not going to play it tonight, but Dr. Hall and I, we came up with this idea that we would teach the kids about CubeSats. It was something that they could get a hold of. It was fairly new, and not go too deep, just kind of research some of their missions, what they do. And he gave them a little problem of actually trying to open a payload door. So we got a 3D printer, a little maker bot. The kids, it was funny, we first got that thing, they would sit around that thing crisscross applesauce legs trying to, it looked like you were doing story time in kindergarten. They were so fascinated with that piece of equipment. And we actually wore that machine out in 1 year, just with the number of prints that the kids did. So we started printing 1U CubeSats, and I'll run forward now. So you can see that this front page here, you can see this would be a average year of kids, a group that we would work with. And this has been going about this size of group every year since 2015. I think we're at about 230, 235 kids now that's been a part of this project. I didn't realize.
It's unbelievable. And do you have any idea that Huntsville, Alabama had this much stuff going on?
So another teacher and I, we went and I took my camera, and Patrick's like, you cannot take any video in this facility. So they had a cameraman come around, and they made a professional video for us to use with the kids. Cameraman came along, and he followed us, and we made this little story about me running into Patrick and needing help with the project. So we come up with the CubeSat, And that's how it all started. So the kids watched that video, and then you can see this is a 3D print that the kids did on our printer, and they opened the door with a little program that we use. Really, by Christmas of that first year, we had completed everything that Dr. Hall and myself thought we would do that year. They were so into it. They were working at home. They were working during other classes, which was an issue. And he came for the mid-year review, and they had done everything. He's like, we got to step up our game. So we gave them more projects and more things to do. This is Dr. Hall and Alex Few and some of the kids in the back. So that spring, we went down to Marshall, to Redstone, and the kids presented to the to about 10 engineers. And really, it was terrible. It was good. It was terrible. We did really 5 of the same presentations about what we had done, and everybody was kind of cordial. We had one guy, Jason, who was kind of their boss, and you know, I was asking him how he did, and he said, really, you know, that wasn't that great. And he said, you know, you didn't really solve the problem, da 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 da. So I appreciated that. We went back and we remade our model of presentations, and we learned from these guys that nobody knows it all. We all thought they would all know everything. Well, they don't. And so we didn't feel like we had to know everything. And so they only spoke to just little pieces as a group. And that's how we still present. So after that presentation, about 3 days after that presentation down at Redstone, Canaveral, or headquarters, called Patrick. And Patrick calls me and he says, Todd, headquarters called. And I said, oh, Todd, no, they shouldn't have put that stuff on social media by us going. He goes, no, it's good. He said, they want you to try to put a satellite up. And I'm like, well, there's no way we can do that. I can barely keep up with middle school kids. I know I can't put a satellite in space. So he said, well, if Oak Ridge can't do it, nobody can. So we started working on trying to put a team together. There was a whole thing about some guys trying to find scientists at the lab. Nobody wanted to touch it. And then the guy that was helping me, Jerry Powell, said, I got one more guy. I'm going to talk to Peter Thornton. And Peter Thornton thought about it a little bit. I taught his kids, and they'd been in the technology club, the same as some of your students had. And so we joined up and started trying to figure this out. The second year we were there, we began mission development, and the kids would FaceTime. This guy, he's in engineering at Georgia Tech, excuse me. But that's Dr. Hall, and that's my phone is down on a document camera, and they would just like they would have been out there and try to come up with a new mission. It was grueling 3 months or so of trying to come up with a mission. And finally, this guy right here and his partner said, we would like to check the regrowth of the forest around the Gatlinburg fires. Dr. Hall about come out of his skin. He goes, that is great. That's it. That's what you're going to do. You can use a camera. And then they said, we would like to share that data with other science teachers. So the mission was born right in this classroom by those two students. And it's moved from there. This would be our second year group. They would always take us on really cool little behind the scene tours while we were there each year. We started working on going and doing presentations with Night Rotary and different places, trying to get money to buy more printers so we could do some more prototyping. You see the kids giving presentations here at Night Rotary. And then our team continued to build. You can see Dr. Thornton, Michelle Thornton, Dr. Thornton's wife. These guys, Kate's not with us. There's Ian Gothert. And this guy I'm pretty proud of. He was actually my student in middle school in Knoxville, and I've taught his kids. And he works at the lab or at Y12, and he was part of our project to begin with. So year 3 begins with trying to get our actual proposal together, which was accepted by the CubeSat launch initiative. Dr. Thornton headed that up. We found out that we would be on the International Space Station for deployment. So we started working toward, learning about that. realized that we were going to need a 2U instead of a 1U, and Dr. Thornton and the mentors will talk about that in a little bit. But we did decide we need a 2U size satellite that year. You can see the kids started printing some larger satellites. We did get a proclamation for being accepted in the CubeSat launch initiative. You see the kids here are coding. This young lady this year, she's a 7th grader in this picture. Yeah, and this just last month, I talked to the secretary with Dr. Thornton and a remote ORNL presentation in the classroom, her and another student. You can just see the number of kids that would be involved in this on a daily basis. So then we got our first big infusion of money from Oak Ridge National Lab. Dr. Zachariah, $15,000. With that money, we actually bought the frame for our frame and CPU and started building from there. It was kind of like Christmas opening that first package up. See, this was right for the pandemic. Christmas. Visit Oak Ridge schools and come to Robertsville and learn about the RamSat satellite project. So the kids did a really great presentation to him in our classroom. It was really a good day. There was a lot of local government officials, city and the county that came to be a part of that. They just did a great job. And then you can see we have senior high school kids here at this point coming back and working with the kids. So that little guy right there, he's one, and this guy, these two actually were the ones that came up in 7th grade in their year, and they're still involved. This would be just a CAD drawing of the project. The kids actually drew these and assembled. Well, we had components, but they actually assembled it, which was quite a challenge. You can see during the pandemic, we were supposed to do our actual assembly for deployment, and the schools were closed. So we got permission to bring for all original kids. These two that come up with the items. So these guys came in and worked with the mentors and actually assembled the satellite for the first time during the pandemic. So we had permission for that to happen. We took it for a shake test and it passed the shake test with global testing. And a week after the shake test was finished, we had a malfunction with the chips in the very bottom. The whole satellite had to come back apart. So a whole new group of kids got to put the satellite together during the last year. So we started after the COVID and not being able to really work in school with the kids in groups, we started doing night classes. So on Thursday nights, the kids would come in smaller groups and work with the mentors and actually reassembled RamSat for the second time. This was our first picture we took with it. That was a big night. It was given another shake test. We got our, this is our official patch, which we think is pretty cool, that NASA and NanoRacks put together and has our school name on it and all. And then you can see the list of people that were supposed to be on this launch. And I will say that of that whole list, only RamSat and a satellite from Europe called SOAR were the only two that deployed. The rest kind of didn't finish because schools were closed and couldn't finish. We did launch on the 3rd of June. We had a pretty good group of kids and parents that went down to watch the launch. We had 2 of our students that actually got on NASA TV the day before and talked about the project. There we are. We went down to the beach and kind of watched the launch from the beach. That's our actual launch. And that's our deployment on June 14th. And now we're back to getting images this year. These are our first images. You can see a student right here that's downloading with the mentors. And we've had several images that have downloaded, which mentors will talk about. I took this just maybe 2 weeks ago. Well, the week before fall break, we had this many kids on a Thursday night working on building some components. So that is all I want to say. I probably talked longer than I wanted to. Any questions?
Very nice.
Oh,
That's great, Todd. Wow. Are you ready? We're gonna hear from other people, but are you going to be able to start another couple of RamSats this year?
We're not doing this one.
I think we'll just sit back and enjoy this one for a while, right?
That was a lot of work in a short time. Wow.
Peter, go ahead.
Well, I will say the kids have worked hard. The kids and the schools have been cooperative. They have broken many of their rules about purchasing and stuff, because it's a public institution, knowing, just how we had to go about purchasing things, how we had to buy them. They were so accommodating to this project. It couldn't have happened if we hadn't had support from SAB, from administration, but the mentors have truly led this. I mean, this is so far above my head that, they just kind of look at me as the frog in the room. Like if I get it, probably the kids get it. Right. So I'm just their big middle school kid to watch over. So, and I have learned so much from them.
Peter, you were about to say something, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to the proposal process that Todd described. And that is to say that, David, you were part of our feasibility review panel for that. And we had a number of people, experts from different fields, look over our plan and provide feedback. That was before we ever submitted the review. So we sure appreciated that. And we got a lot of good suggestions from you and that whole panel. So that was great.
It was a really impressive proposal, even at that stage. I was impressed. I was incredulous that it might be possible to get high-res data, but wow.
Well, you'll see some examples tonight.
So Peter probably won't tell you that of the, I don't know if there's 24, 26 proposals that were accepted that year under the CubeSat launch initiative. Because of that proposal and how well it was done, we were number 2, only by country. I don't remember what it was there. I think they were looking at some kind of canopy or something. I can't really remember but we were number 2 for launch as far as priority, which says a lot for their proposal.
So we've got a lot of other information that we can share, but it would take some time, I think, to just take your questions on the kind of student engagement part of this before we dive into that. And really at any time, just I'll try to pause as I'm speaking and and shout out your questions. It's probably more interesting to just take this where your curiosity drives it, because there's more material here than we can cover in the time that we have. So,
Yeah.
So are there questions for Todd on that introductory part?
Could we post some things in the chat box perhaps? And
Absolutely, yeah. I'll open up the chat myself and try to keep an eye on that. I'm not really good at talking and reading, so if anybody sees something there that would be a good thing to respond to, shout out.
well, I guess I'll just come online. I'm a visitor here. Thank you very much for pulling this together and publicizing it so the community could watch and learn from this. You had one depiction there of the layout of the parts of the satellite. They had a lot of very complicated kinds of parts, it looked to me. How did you develop the design of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually the first thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about when we moved into the next section here, was about our design approach. So I'll just go ahead and start that, and then we can take other questions as that develops. One of the things that when we went down to Marshall and met with the engineers down there, and that was just a fantastic experience, by the way, to have people who were experts in building real honest to goodness spacecraft and experts in every little piece of it. As Todd said, not any one of them had the whole perspective, but one of the things that they taught us was that there is this systems engineering paradigm that NASA uses to coordinate these really big, complicated missions. And they actually gave us a couple of copies of a multi-100-page handbook of system engineering that they use. And of course, a lot of it is way more than we would ever need for our project. But the key message that we took away from that is that you can start with a description of the requirements. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is your mission? And just kind of back your way out from there. Okay, you want to take a picture of forests over Gatlinburg. Well, obviously you need cameras and you need power and you need a way to point it. You need a computer to control everything and you need a radio to make those. So it was this process of just kind of working backwards from what the students had dreamed. This is their mission. Well, now we had to back out through the details of how you actually accomplish that mission. So in a nutshell, that was the design process, and it was iterative and also amenable to this idea that you can turn teams of students loose on research for different parts of it and have them working in parallel, and then get back together and share their ideas with the mentor group and with their teachers and with each other. And I don't know, Todd, how many rounds of that there were, probably 4 or 5, where we were hearing their input, and they, so much of it, they just nailed from the earliest research that they did. They're saying, oh, you're going to need to have sun sensors. And okay, nobody knew anything about sun sensors, but sure enough, our RamSat has 4 sun sensors on it, and the students learned that themselves.
And remember, we were talking about mag torquers and reaction wheels, and we were kind of leaning toward reaction wheels. Well, they wanted mag torquers. Well, we went back to mag torquers in the end. And, and I don't know, I'm sure Peter or the other mentors would know. I feel like in the mid 90% range would probably be a good guess of how accurately the kids looked at this project. I mean, pretty much everything that they thought of, we used. It was amazing to watch, and they would follow, you know, and Peter and the mentors were so good because with being at the lab, you know, when we would go through each little process, like, you know, learning about when we started talking about imagery. Well, the image guys out at the lab, they hosted us. We went out there and they gave a presentation to our kids, and then our kids went back 3 months later with a presentation to them about the stuff that they had learned. So, you know, having the lab and having our mentors, that changed everything for us.
Do we have any other questions right now? And otherwise we can start looking at some of the technical components and talk more about that. David, if you can give Ian Gothert the screen sharing. While he brings that up, I'll just say a few things. Ian has been developing the website for the project all along, as well as doing the programming on the ground station software. But the website, which somebody can put in the Slack or in the chat, I can in a minute if somebody doesn't beat me to it. If you go on that website, there's just an abundance of information there. It's kind of organized as here we go, here's the front page. So it's organized as a blog, and if you just scroll down, you'll see going back in time, the different progress that we've made over the past year or so. And then there's some things that are kind of archived for 2020, so you can check that out as well. On that website, there's also a drop-down list of the components, and that's where Ian had started us out. So let's look at that. And yeah, so this is RamSat without its clothes on, with the solar panels not yet mounted. And this is actually kind of before all the wiring was completed. So you're seeing a bunch of little colored tape tags sticking out. Those are wires that still needed to be soldered together. Following having put it all together once, realized that a chip was burnt out in the very bottom and had to take it all apart, meant cutting a whole bunch of wires, which was an excruciatingly painful experience for all of us. Anyhow, we're looking at the inside of the satellite here, and I mean, this is a nice way to see that the architecture of the satellite is a stack, and on the Ian, if you can go, let's rotate it until we can see the bus. Maybe. There you go. Yeah, so there's a stack of PC 104 card connectors that mate into each other and transmit power and signals up and down that stack. So every board inside has access to all of the information that's coming and going, and as well as the power buses. So that's the basic architecture, is just a stack of commonly formatted boards. And some of them are homemade by us, and most of them are commercial off-the-shelf components. And each of them, you can go in and look at more detail at each of those components. There's an obvious outlier there in the middle that I'll mention, which is the ballast. This big chunk of machined aluminum that sits in the center of RamSat. It takes up quite a bit of space, and its purpose is to add mass so that upon deployment from the space station, it has as much momentum as it can have, and kind of gets us up close to our weight limit for the launch, so that it can stay in orbit as long as possible. And a bit of an interesting tidbit, our radio mentor, David Andrews, N1ESK, who's here on the call, had the brilliant idea to get all of the students, as well as the school, the teachers and administrators from the school, and the mentors' names engraved on the flight hardware. This is looking at a copy of that. They actually, the Protomet group here in town made this for us for free. And the engraving was done on the flight model, as well as on this model that we got to keep.
So how long will that mass keep it in orbit?
The expectation is 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
And it was deployed on June 14th. So we're 5 months in.
So I would like to give a shout out to Protomet for doing that. It actually, one of my students at Robertsville, who now is one of the vice presidents that of that company, I called him and said, we need this made. Could you do it if we send you the drawing, and of course we can pay you, and we need one. Well, he gave us 3 of them, and he wouldn't take a dime for it. So we ran into a lot of goodwill on this project. I do gotta, everywhere we went, everybody was just really understanding and very generous with their contributions to us.
Well, that's wonderful. It's amazing work, amazing technology.
Here's Ian's got us parked on one of my favorite images. This is photograph and then some video down below, but a photograph taken by one of the astronauts on the space station through the cupola.
Oh.
Just after the RamSat and its deployment mate SOAR were deployed, and you can see them there in the center of the picture.
Wow.
And it just boggles my mind that's that we had this in our hands for 5 years and 4 years, and so many students and other people in the community too. We really made an effort to get this kind of in the hands of as many kids as we possibly could, so that they'd be able to say, I held a piece of hardware that's now orbiting the Earth. I don't know. I just think that's kind of
That's
cool.
really important. That's really great. I like it. That's
And somewhere, yeah, there you go. There's a really tight in view of
wow.
it. Yeah, very cool.
So they all feel ownership of this or a hand in it. That's fantastic.
And in addition to just having their hands on it, quite a few of them were able to participate in, much more sophisticated hands-on construction and testing of all the components. So,
Peter, rumor has it that NASA is really picky about people taking photos from space. Did you run into that?
we did, and these pictures here are taken by one of the astronauts who was loading the deployer into a sliding table that went into their airlock on the Japanese module, which is where it kind of makes its way to the outside of the station. And we have some wonderful pictures of that astronaut actually handling the deployer, but we have not yet gotten permission from NASA to put those images on our website. They are very careful about those images of the astronauts themselves.
But I think they're also careful about images taken of the Earth because of things that one might see. So I'm wondering how you handled that one.
Yeah, good question. So we have, in fact, I just last night renewed our NOAA remote sensing license. So we have a private remote sensing license from NOAA for the RamSat system, which consists of 2 cameras, which are 1.2 megapixels each. And so not very sophisticated imaging system, gives us about 150 meter resolution at best for a perfectly downward looking shot. But yeah, they're very particular about that. We had to go through, it took a while to get that license in place, and they don't let us forget about the requirements for keeping it up to date either.
What do you mean by up to date?
Well, the
licensing.
every year we have to renew the license and verify that everything is still accurate. And we can't, like David Andrews has a secondary ground station. We could not do any imaging work from that ground station until we had modified the license.
Wow.
Added his station as a secondary station that could downlink images and uplink commands to take images.
Oh.
We could do everything else. All the other system telemetry is fine, but the imaging part they're very picky about.
Hmm.
So when you're looking at the telemetry, you want to go through, many amateur radio operators could handle the telemetry, but I guess you have to involve perhaps MSAT, perhaps SatNogs. What's the story on that? Or is that something we should ask David later?
No, we can get into that. I'll mention a couple of things and turn it over to David and Ian to talk about that part of it. In terms of the licensing, we coordinated with the IARU, which International Association of, no, I've got it wrong. I can't remember what that stands for actually. But we coordinate with them for a frequency, and they're doing satellite on ham the ham frequencies. They're doing the coordination of all of those all the satellites that are out there. So we requested and received a frequency allocation in the VHF and the UHF from them, and then had to file an FCC license, having obtained that information that talked about the power of the transmitters and the details of the ground station. So we do have that as well. And then, yeah, Ian or David, you guys want to talk about the global network of people who are helping with the telemetry?
And kick that off quickly. David N1ESK. So we have, when I got involved in this project, I'm a latecomer as the group goes. I'm a year 5 recruit. Jim Bogard, KY4L, heard that I was interested and twisted my arm really hard and wouldn't let go. So he got me, and it is stuck. But we early on we heard about SatNogs. SatNogs is a global network of satellite ground stations. Most of them are run by amateur radio operators. It's an open source participatory project where individuals have their ground stations around the world. Most of them are set up with SDRs, which makes it very easy for automated control. And they are monitoring the telemetry channels of participating satellites, and they'll automatically receive the telemetry data and upload it onto the SatNog server, where it's available for registered users to get on and retrieve that data and manipulate it. One of the most powerful features they have is the SatNog's dashboard, which is what you're looking at now. So we quickly signed on to this and did the heavy lifting of getting the SatNog's page running, and it is a godsend because from it we can easily see all of the telemetry that the satellite has. The RamSat is currently configured to send out level 1 telemetry and a AX25 data burst once a minute, which is great if it happens to be within the footprint of the Knoxville Oak Ridge area. But if it happens to be over Europe, we need somebody's ears over there to help us out, tell us what's going on. That's the power of the SatNog system. Jump back real quick. Peter had spoken about the IARU. The IARU is the International Amateur Radio Union. It's a consortium of all the different state entities in the world, and they coordinate the frequency usages and band plans for communications worldwide. And a big part of what they're working on now, of course, is satellite frequency allocations within the amateur radio band. And when you think about it, almost every CubeSat that's going up right now has an amateur radio payload on it, because that is by far the easiest band for licensing purposes, is to use the amateur band. We're using a UHF downlink channel and a VHF uplink channel for commands. We are 9600 baud up and 9600 baud back, and we're using standard amateur radio AX25 packet messaging, unproto packet messaging. So it's a pretty simple thing. It's not encoded, it's not encrypted. And I believe there's a little over 400 stations right now that are in the RamSat network with their ground stations. RamSat, or the group that's behind RamSat, has created a prototype for a standard, uniform, relatively inexpensive ground station. And they have built 5 of these prototypes. 3 of them are in use at various astronomy facilities up at Harvard. One of them's out in the Midwest and one's in Europe. They call this the LSTN, the Library, busted. I believe it's a Library Science Technology Network or something like that. It's a basic ground station. One of the images that was shown by Peter a few minutes ago was the latest build we did, where in one evening, and actually a little under an hour, we broke the kids up into 3 separate teams, and we actually built an LSTN ground station, which is currently doing field testing at the lower level at my house here. In the next couple of weeks, it'll go up to the kids, and they have to decide where in Oak Ridge it's going to be placed and put on the air. So the RamSat team will actually have their own SatNog station in addition to the regular ground stations that we have both in Loudon and up in Oak Ridge. Ian, you want to talk about some particulars of
Yeah,
sat
sure.
navs?
As Peter and David said, the ground stations, these people are all pointing up and listening to this beacon that RamSat is sending out. Last heard from was 3 hours ago, and if you go to our website, you'll get a link to both of these SatNog websites. But it's right over the South Pacific Ocean right now, so there's not much listening going on there. But we send out every minute a broadcast message of just some basic onboard telemetries, battery voltage, temperature, is it charging? You can see this is the graph of RamSat since launch, and you can see how the temperature has risen and fallen depending upon different orbital parameters that we've seen it. We've had it. You can see here on the panel temperatures. There's four panel temperature sensors that we're seeing, and we can see where at times it's fallen into an orbit where one panel is facing the sun at all the times. We've seen this several times now, and we've had to send it a course correction to tell it to spin, because that's very hot and this is very cold, and we want to see a much more uniform spin to it. So this dashboard has been very, very helpful in helping diagnose. You can actually see here again where the sun sensors, where it was spinning with one side towards the sun at all times. So lots and lots of information. You can interact with it and zoom in. This is the urgency plot, we call it. This is the elevation. And you can see that it is very much on a downward decline. However, it has stabilized and actually gone up a little bit here fairly recently. And of course, you can dig into extremely detailed. Let's just look right. Just select this here, all courtesy of SatNogs, and you can look and see each minute by minute plot on how it's doing and what it's doing. In addition to that, we store on board telemetry. One of the disadvantages of this is it's only what people happen to observe, and during this time frame, there were only 394 plots. But it also stores 3 levels of telemetry on board that we can request and be downloaded. And David's in the process of downloading all of that. And of course, the question everybody is interested in is the images as well. We can take images on command, and we can take images autonomously if the satellite is within a bounding box. We can instruct it to take a photograph if the conditions are right, and that those conditions are you pointing towards the Earth? Is it daytime? In other words, do you have enough solar electricity to power the camera, and are you within that bounding box? So that's what we're in the process right now. It's currently configured to take photographs over the Smoky Mountains. Obviously, there's a lot to get right, because it only is over the Smoky Mountains for just a few minutes, and maybe once or twice a day, and it has to be oriented during the daylight. So we're still waiting to get those photographs, unless we've gotten any. Do we have any announcements, Peter? If we've gotten any. Peter, do you want to maybe go through some of the photographs that we've gotten so far now?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
It's Rob, but I have a quick question on your images. You said you're doing everything via 9600 baud downlink, including all your images. That image data is coming at that rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Short answer is yes.
128 bytes in a packet because of an oddity about how the maximum packet size is 256 bytes for this, because of the combination of the flight computer we have the flight radio that we have and the ground station TNC. And because of another issue, we have to have everything coming as ASCII. as opposed to using the full binary capability. So we're sending binary data as hex ASCII tuples. So we actually get 128.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got images here.
Those are beautiful, Peter. Wow.
So these are the first two images that we got. And I'll just preface this by saying, we didn't know if any of this would work. We didn't know if any of it, whether it was going to turn on. We did everything we possibly could think of to test and verify that we had our best chance of having a functioning system, but so many things can go wrong. And so at every stage of the mission, from the point at which we had handed it over to NASA to put on their handed it over to SpaceX actually to put on the resupply mission to the space station, till when it deployed and began to operate, we were just on the edge of our seats, because you just don't know what you're going to get. And first the radio working, and we're getting communication on the telemetry, and we finally had a chance to take some pictures and then begin to downlink them. And as you just heard, that's a slow and somewhat tedious and sort of painful process, because you got to get each of these packets and then stitch them back together. And these are JPEG images. So if you miss a packet in the middle, everything is kind of scrambled. But the short story is, we got these first images after a couple of tries and got them together. And this image on the left was the first one that we saw. And that was a really good feeling to be able to see that the cameras are working. We're obviously, seeing something on the planet Earth, and we're able to, transmit the data and get a full image. The two cameras are side by side, as you saw in some of those images. And one is taking images in the visible spectrum, just like a normal camera. And the other has a lens which does not have a near infrared cut filter installed on it, which almost all normal, like cell phone camera lenses will have. So this does not have that filter. And that means that the near infrared spectrum from like 700 nanometers out to about 1400, or in this case, about 1400 nanometers, is getting through. And the image sensors, the standard image sensors in just about any camera that you've got, any digital camera that you've got, are sensitive to near infrared wavelengths. And so by taking that filter out, you can get the combination of visible plus near infrared, and that's what's shown on the right-hand side. And the really nice thing about that is that vegetation is highly reflective in the near infrared wavelengths and very absorptive in the visible wavelengths. And so you can do some nice differencing between those in order to highlight the areas that have or do not have vegetation. Now, we haven't quite got to that stage yet, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But what you can see very clearly, the cloud that you have right here is the same cloud that you have right here. So the satellite has tilted a little bit between these two images, but all of this very dark area here is all of this area here, same area, just a couple of seconds later. And the reason that it's so much brighter here is because this is lots of farmland and forest. And if anybody cares to take a guess at what we're looking at, feel free to shout it out. I didn't know at first, but people who are from this area will recognize this feature as the south end of Lake Superior. And this is the Milock Lake, and we're looking at the Duluth and Minneapolis region. So there's just tons of farmland and forest all around there, and that's why this is so bright in the near infrared. And the lake is dark in both visible and the near infrared. So anyhow, of course, the other really amazing thing about this picture is that we can see the edge of the Earth. And so we've gotten a few pictures like that now that show that. So that was our first pair of images. And there's not a lot that we can do in terms of our mission from that, except to see that both of the cameras are working, and we are getting the kind of signal that we expect from that near infrared and visible wavelengths. And just to show you, we're on the right-hand side is a Google Earth map that I was using to try to identify, yeah, okay, that is in fact what we're looking at, is the south end of Lake Superior.
Wow, that's really exciting.
And then here's the next image that we got. And we have several that are like glorious lens flare like this. So whenever we get the sun in any part of the image, this is what it looks like. Excuse me. So we don't have really good control over the pointing. Somebody asked that in the chat. We have systems on board the Magnetorquer and a lot of math built into the software to be able to point. And we're just in the process of trying to test out all of that. We know that we can turn the satellite, but actually pointing it exactly where we want it is our biggest technical challenge, and we are not there yet. So we get some pictures that look like that. And we get some pictures that are just completely black, looking out into the darkness of space. But we have also gotten some really excellent pictures looking almost straight down on a nearly cloudless day. And that's what I'm going to show you here. So here are the first two images that we got. And really at this point, the only two images that have this quality, where when we first saw these, we're like, yes, this is the view that we are looking for. This is the best that we can do in terms of a nadir view pointing straight down and seeing vegetation and other patterns on the land surface. One thing that, again, this is visible on the left, near infrared plus visible on the right. And one thing that's obvious if you just look at these from a distance is that there's a big hazy glare in the middle of both of these images. Some of that is atmospheric haze, and some of it is an artifact of the combination of the image sensor that we have on these cameras and the lens that we're using. They're not perfectly matched. And there's a long story behind why we had to go with what we went with, but we could do better on a second time around with a little bit more real estate to pack the cameras into, and we could have a larger format image sensor on the cameras. But it is possible that there's enough of a consistent pattern in that image artifact that we can actually correct for it. And this is an example of that correction. First, it's just kind of calculating what that bias is and then removing that bias. That's this upper right-hand picture. And then doing some contrast stretching to really bring out all the details that are available in the image. And this is what. So this is the best we can do with an image like that. There's still artifacts that you can see, but some of it, we're just never going to be able to do better than that. That's the visible spectrum. And this is the same thing done with the near infrared. So we can get some excellent imagery out of this. I'm going to show you one of these now side by side so you can see the full detail.
Wow. Impressive.
For a little bit because it's so cool to look at.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
If anybody cares to, maybe you saw on the website already where this is, but if you have a guess, go ahead and shout it out.
I was going to ask if that's Lake Lanier in the upper right, but I don't know.
What would it be near? I'm not sure.
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Bingo.
Huh.
You got it. That's the Atlanta metropolitan area.
Ah, the small. Okay.
North is facing this way, and so to the
Oh,
more or less.
okay.
And there are a couple of really interesting things that you can see in here. One is that you're getting into the foothills of the mountains here,
Nice.
and you can see the shading with the sun. This was in the afternoon, and the sun was hitting the west side of these hill slopes. And in the near infrared spectrum, that shows up just beautifully. And the other thing that's cool is that you can see, of course, the water just jumps out as these dark features, and there's plenty of that to see.
Huh.
The other thing that I'll call your attention to that you can see kind of in both, if you zoom in real close on the visible and the near infrared, are these bright white specks in here and here, here. And you can see they're showing up bright in both the visible and the near infrared. Those are warehouses. So they're you know, these gigantic warehouses that are thousands of feet by hundreds of feet each. And there are places where, like right in here, there are a couple that are sort of separated from others, and I was able to kind of zoom around on Google Earth and find that one of them is the Solo Cup Factory. One of them is the General Mills distribution warehouse. And anyhow, it's just, I think it's very cool that you can see that level of detail from what is a very, very primitive imaging system. I'll just tell this little anecdote, and then I'll be quiet and take some of your questions. The whole system, for all the hardware, cost about $60,000 when we purchased all the different parts: the frame, the battery, the solar panels, the flight computer, the magnetorquer, the antenna, the radio. Every piece of that is kind of space rated and extremely expensive, to where our jaws were just dropping as we were getting quotes on these pieces. And we tried to find cameras that were in that same of a size and a quality and a cost that would sort of fit within our budget. And we were not able to find that. We were not able to find a space rated camera that was small enough and inexpensive enough for use in a project like this. If we had done a 3U satellite and had another $20,000, we could have done something different. But it kind of violates the whole principle of what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to advance the science of space imaging. We were trying to get cameras in space and teach the students about engineering and how to run a project. So what we ended up doing was using an Arduino camera, the ArduCam, which is like a $60 camera that is absolutely not space rated, and a $120 lens from Germany that they practically would not sell it to us once they learned what we were going to do with it, because they were so sure that it wasn't going to survive the vibrations of launch. And that's our imaging system, and this is what you can do with it. So I don't know. I'm inclined to go into business and create something that's twice as expensive and 4 times more powerful, and provide them to the next round of CubeSat.
What? Great success.
So yeah, I'll take take questions, and I'm going to jump out of the, well, let's see, do I have any other? Yeah, Atlanta. Oh, okay, we had one more image, sorry. This is our latest image, and I have been struggling to figure out what it is. I think I know what it is, but I'm not 100% sure yet. If anybody cares to enter a guess, I'll write it down and let you know if you're right.
Looks like waves on an ocean, but I don't know what the shapes are.
I believe that we're looking at the Gulf of Mexico, and Mobile and the Atchafalaya, the Delta here. I don't mean Mobile.
So those are clouds, not in the air, not waves on the water.
This is all cloud, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
right,
And we
okay.
haven't done the image correction on this, so it's as clear as it could be. And this is, I think, some of the bigger bayous on the Mississippi, heading down to the to New Orleans. So I'm not sure that that's right, but I can't figure out anything else that it could be yet.
Peter, do you have the corresponding infrared on that one?
Unfortunately, oh, this is the infrared.
Okay.
What we lack at the moment is the visible, because we're missing at least one packet. David can tell me how many, and I haven't given up hope that we can get it, but it's been very stubborn and it might be permanently corrupted.
Oh,
Well, isn't the promise of SatNogs that with a coordinated reception from 400 stations, 400 receiving stations, that you can take all this data and stack it up and resolve the missing pixels?
That's correct. And we've done some of that. Obtained. We have a good friend in Virginia, or a new friend in Virginia, who is has provided some of our missing packets in exactly that way.
oh.
This one seems to be an issue on board, that just getting that data from the SD card and transmitting it, there's a problem with reading that sector on the SD card. It seems like we're not totally sure what the
Yeah, we have a couple of images that are like this, but we have one packet that will not copy. And I'll be working it from the station here at the house. Will be a good 40-50 degrees elevation, a nice clear signal, and that packet is simply not coming down. So it's, as Peter's saying, we think it's an SD card issue, a storage card issue, as opposed to a transmission problem.
And we did have some problems like that during ground testing that we were not able to resolve. It was really the only software hardware issue that we launched knowing that we had, and everything else we had pretty much been able to sort out. But that every once in a while we get one of these images that just gets stuck on one of its packets.
Well, that's amazing that that's the only problem you've got. Like you said, there's so many things that can go wrong that that's really amazing. It's such a successful thing. There's so many links in the chain, and if any one link breaks, you don't get to the end of the image processing. And so you guys really, I'm impressed.
A bigger mission would of course have all kinds of redundancy, and we have a little bit of that in that we have 4 solar panels, for example, 5 solar panels. And so if one panel goes completely dead, we can still keep the battery charged. The power system, actually our power budget is quite good. Every once in a while we run it down with a long radio transmission, but we can stay powered 24/7 pretty much.
How many watts does it take to send the data down?
It's a 1 watt.
Okay.
We maybe have it turned up to 1.5. We're not entirely sure about that. What we have heard from the SatNog community is that our signal is very strong, which is good.
Wow, from 1 watt. That's amazing.
So yeah, I was going to ask on the, I saw when you were showing the graphs, you were peaking at like 1.5 amps at 8 volts, right? That's 12 watts of consumption. Is that, what else besides the radio is like really pulling heavy power off you?
The cameras, when they're on, have a pretty good draw. It's about 500 milliamp. And if they're on both at the same time. And so we turn them on and off. But that spike, we think, is a very brief spike when the transmitter turns on. There's a current surge into the transmitter if it's off and comes on. And it's very short, and the system is tolerant of that. The electric power system allows those short spikes.
That's probably that's probably capacitors that are leaked down, getting recharged.
That could be, because if I do a download pass, I may have 5 or 6 minutes of downloads with, it'll run for a minute and a half, and then I'll send a new command up in another minute and a half, and I'll do that 3 or 4 shots. So 5 or 6 minutes worth of transmissions. And yet we only get that initial surge at the very beginning of that whole routine. That does make sense that it's, charging capacitors is a part of the transmitter wake up, and then after that is.
Yeah, that's pretty common with electronics and computers now, is to have a surge, and then over time that'll leak down. I have another thing. Those antennas aren't directional, are they? Aren't they just point source?
Hey guys, I hate to interrupt, but I've got to run. School comes early in Oak Ridge, and I've got a lot of kids.
Thank you so much, Todd. Appreciate it greatly.
Okay, thank you all so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Peter, I have a question for you. Did you ever have a question of how you balance the absolute need to get your data back in packets versus the temptation to send a signal in a different, any number of different types of modulations, so that amateurs could understand what's going on without going through the encoding of SatNogs?
Let's see. I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Everything that we're doing, we didn't even know about SatNogs until after. We hadn't planned anything with SatNogs or with that system in mind until after launch. So we were thinking most of our downlink was going to have to be at the ground station at the school.
Wow.
And so the design consideration for that was that we needed something that we knew was robust for an uplink and downlink communication channel that we were not going to have to come up with on our own. And so that was packet radio, AX25 packets. And we started out with 1200 baud as our target. And I did some messing around with the TNCX packet transmitter and some handheld radios working at 1200 baud. And then as we called around to some people who make these space ready, almost nobody was handling 1200 baud, and 9600 was the standard that we could get. And so that was fine, because there are a number of commercial TNCs that we can just hook up to the radio, hook up to the computer, and we're in business. So we don't need anything real special to have that communication.
So the onboard's radio has the capability, with us simply sending a few control commands, to increase the data rate. And I believe we can go up to 38K. And a lot of TNCs that are out there now, the more modern TNCs, can actually support that. But you get into real sketchy territory there. If you want something that's solid and robust, is field proven, that is going to work, you're going to stick with 9600.
I realized my question was a little bit unusual. Our first balloon launch, we sent back altitude data, station identification data, temperature, and we tracked it. The CAP was involved, and we had I don't remember, over 100 hams actually involved in doing directional location. But so that was the data. But we also had transmitted two things. One was Kennedy authorizing, the voice of Kennedy authorizing the space program, and Neil Armstrong setting foot on the moon. This was the anniversary of Apollo 11. So that a lot of people found that very interesting, and I think it raised the level of curiosity and enthusiasm about the scientific part. So that's why I asked a very strange question of it could possibly be not only a data mission, but it could be sending back real-time whistlers. It could be sending back a summary of synthesized speech explaining what happened in the last 24 hours in terms of events. Okay,
Yeah,
that's where it comes from.
absolutely. Okay, now I understand your question better. Yeah, that we actually had excuse me, some internal discussions about how far could we go with adding additional modes. We could have a CW beacon.
Yeah.
You could have a voice relay, right? We could have put a repeater on there, like the Fox series satellites, the AMSAT satellites use. In fact, we could have probably gotten one of their repeaters if we had coordinated with them. We might have been able to get that one of their radios in there as an additional capability on board. At every step of that, I was kind of the gatekeeper for complexity.
Okay.
And part of that is because I was also the chief software architect for the flight software. And I was working in a system that I was not very familiar with in terms of programming this microcontroller, which was a PIC24F microcontroller programmed in C. I wasn't writing it in assembly or anything like that, but I had never done any of that before. And so everything was new. And I was just trying to be super careful about making sure that it was robust, that each new piece that we were adding, each new peripheral that I was turning on that PIC, which has a ton of peripherals, that we really understood how it worked and that we were accomplishing our mission with as little complexity as possible, just to try to limit the potential for unintended consequences for cool things that we'd like to put in there that then interfere with each other and just make it hard to debug and maybe prevent it from working altogether. So I had to be kind of hard-nosed about that on a few occasions.
Made some good choices there. Rob asked a question about the dipoles. It looks like you've got two dipoles, one VHF and one UHF. And he says, "Is that right?" And I would add to that is it's a pretty cute deployment there with the swing out hinges plus the springy. Did you guys engineer that yourselves, or come on?
No, that was an off the shelf. That's such a beautiful mechanism, and that whole component is just gorgeously designed and executed by a company called Innovative Solutions in Space, which abbreviates to ISIS, which is a little unfortunate when you're trying to send material to the school system from ISIS. They're in the Netherlands.
Man.
And they make a couple of different components, and that's one that a number of CubeSats of our class have used successfully. And it's just a gorgeous piece of engineering.
I don't understand why you don't use a dish, a small reflector to collimate the signal instead of dipoles, which are broad, which are point source.
Yeah, the problem we have is that we do not have enough attitude control over the spacecraft to guarantee that it's going to be pointed down.
Yeah, it's a miracle if you're transmitting a watt from 220 miles. It's a miracle that you can get anything.
Yeah, there are times I think when because of the rotation, you kind of go through the nodes of that dipole and lose communication, but it's remarkably solid. The downlink is kind of almost horizon to horizon, maybe like from 4 or 5 degrees when we're doing it from the school where there aren't trees and other things in the way. It's a very robust downlink.
Yeah, we worked out the link budget, the RF link budget during the design phase, and we had plenty enough margin with 1 watt using the existing directional antennas at the school to make it work. And
that's the key, is the directional antenna on the roof.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the receivers and the transmitters on Earth that you need the high gain, high sensitivity, and all that.
right,
1
mass
watt
mount
up in
premium.
space is plenty.
You know, that's going to be great once you know the satellite orbit elements. But must be this period after it's launched. Do they tell you quickly what are the orbital elements for the launch craft? So you just track it that way?
Yeah, they do, and they provided us some ideas about what that would look like. We were not sophisticated enough to make a lot of use of that early on, but what we did know is that we were just deployed from the space station, and we have the orbital elements of the space station, and it's a 3 meters per second, I think, is the difference in velocity between us and the space station. So there were many hours when we were indistinguishable from the space station in terms of pointing. So we used the space station's elements to track it.
Yeah.
We were at the school, with the students, anxiously awaiting our first received beacon message, thinking that we had a pretty good chance because it was right after launch and it just happened to be a good overpass, which as in hindsight was actually very fortunate. And we didn't hear anything, and we went home kind of dejected. And by the time I got to my house from the school, I had an email from this guy in Virginia who was one of the SatNogs operators and said, "Congratulations, I just got signal I got the beacon from your satellite."
Wow.
And so that was a really great help. And it boosted our spirits considerably, I'll say. But he was also just tracking the station. And within a week, we had received, I was back and forth in communication with the 18th Space Force wing that does the tracking of everything, the radar tracking of space objects. And they were in the process of trying to assign us an object ID, and the TLE that goes along with that. And at the same time, we were in communication with the SatNogs community, who had just, exploded. Anytime a new satellite goes up, they're just all over it.
Yeah.
And, so they had a number of people who were doing some pretty sophisticated tracking of it and looking at frequency shifts Doppler shifts as it was over. And we were getting information from the Space Force saying, okay, we think your object such and such, because there were two satellites deployed at the same time, and it takes some time for them to separate enough for them to get 2 different signals. So they said, we think you're 48851 and the other one is 48850. And so I passed that on to the SatNogs community so that they could update their TLEs and do a better job of tracking. And Freddie and SatNog says, no, I don't think that's right. I think it's the other way around. And I was like, okay, you want me to go tell the Space Force that I wrong about? So I said, you better give me some good background, some good evidence to back that up. And he did. He sent me some screenshots of tracking that made it pretty clear that yeah, we were not, we were 48850. I sent that off to them and they were like, oh, thanks. You know, we've had some good information from SatNogs before and they were right this time too. So yeah, that's.
If you have any questions from them, any trouble, just tell them you're running some equipment that you got from ISIS, and they'll
yeah, there you go. As another humorous anecdote, I am now a licensed importer of goods from the Netherlands because this thing was shipped to the school in the middle of COVID when there's nobody there. And so we knew that we couldn't actually get it shipped to the school. So they had it shipped to my house. And because I was the receiver of these goods, which were more than $5,000 or whatever the limit is, it raised all kinds of flags. It got stuck in a FedEx depot in Memphis, waiting for confirmation that duty fees had been paid on it, and we had paid, but the paperwork didn't make it through with the package, and it was this big mess. But in the end, I had to register as a licensed importer of goods from the Netherlands. And last month, I got a piece of mail from the state of Tennessee saying, it's come to our attention that you are a licensed importer of goods from the Netherlands, and you owe us $800 in state sales tax for having received this piece of equipment. And you have so many days to contest this. And so I knew, you know, I was going to be able to talk them down from that because this is a nonprofit kind of thing through the school. And the school was great. They got me all the receipts that I needed and I sent it off and everybody was just fantastic about it. They're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. You're fine.
Glad you got help with that. I've been through this customs thing, sending stuff to Spain, a computer to Spain, and they charge us like 3 times the price of the whole computer for customs, and we couldn't fix it from the company that I was working at.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was,
that global logistics stuff, they wanted me to take a class in it. And I'm like, no, I'm an engineer. I'm not a marketing person or but I've been through the ringer like that. I'm glad you didn't get nailed for the 800.
yeah, me too. That was
I think the school would have gotten that bill. Right?
What's that?
I thought the school would probably get that bill, right? Not if they were going to insist on it.
If they were going to insist, yeah, somehow or other, I probably would have gotten somebody else to pay it.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of that sort of expensive stuff, your space rated stuff, you said you had a couple of the cameras were non-space rated. Is there anything else that you didn't have space rated and anything else you thought, I wonder why I got space rated? Right.
There's nothing that I'm sorry that we have that's space rated. For example, the solar panels were $20,000 for a very small area coverage of solar panels, which seems ridiculous. But they're made by a company that guarantees them for this kind of, that produces them to be used in this kind of environment. And they have really been hammered by the space environment. We've got temperature sensors on them. And as you saw from some of that telemetry.
Yeah, 100 C.
One of those panels sits, pretty close to 100 C for almost a month. And so it's just roasting and roasting and roasting. And the other side, 10 centimeters away, is minus 60. And so, I mean, just think about the temperature gradients that you've got there, even just across, it's like 10 degrees C inside in the center of the satellite. And so just across that solar panel, there's a huge temperature gradient. And when it's spinning at the right velocity, angular velocity, it evens out pretty well. But yeah, I'm not sorry that we spent the money on that. They've been performing beautifully. We did have to make, and if somebody wanted to share, we could show you, you could look at it on the website too. we
It's
had
the op
to-
amp board.
Yeah, the op amp board. You can tell
I
that's
saw
a
it.
homegrown.
I already went through all of what you had.
Yeah. So the solar panel manufacturer is a company called Pumpkin that also manufactured the frame and produces the flight computer that we were using. They make other components, but those are the ones we use from them. They added for free on our order the sun sensors on the solar panels because they were testing it for a next release of their hardware, and so they had these ready and they gave them to us. And all they gave us for the sort of manual for that was a circuit diagram of the op amp circuit that we needed to turn the voltages from those sun sensors into something that our ADC could interpret. And so, yeah, we had to build that out ourselves. And all of those components that you see on that, all those potted capacitors, and they're as good as we could buy, but they're not particularly space rated. And the op amps themselves are just, they're just op amps. They're 4 on each of those chips, and they're nothing special. So I didn't know how robust that would be. It turns out that's all working fine. We don't have any issues with it.
That's those violent temperature changes are going to screw around with your resistances. And then if there's any dissimilar metals in there, you're going to have thermoelectric effects on the just from the circuitry in the board.
There is a heat sink and distribution coating on the back of the panels, and that's part of their design and manufacture. So they've got a copper plating on the back which spreads the heat out to the edges where it attaches to the frame. And in our case, the aluminum ballast is doing a lot to stabilize temperatures inside. The temperatures go from like pretty close to 0 up to about 15 C inside. So it's not very extreme in the core.
So it's a thermal mass as well as inertial.
Yeah.
With the sun being more active now, do you worry about the effect of solar substorms and that sort of thing?
Yeah, very much. I was wondering if we might see some consequences from the recent activity, and I'm sure we'll get more chances. We didn't notice anything particularly. Everything seems to be behaving as before, and we are not in the worst radiation environment at low Earth orbit, so we're still getting some protection. But yeah, that's a real concern.
Peter, wondering this thing about sun sensors. I know people use them. It always seemed to me that you already have them. You already have solar panels. Are the sun sensors just a backup? Because that's what a solar panel is.
The sun sensors give a really nice sinusoidal or kind of cosine sensitivity to the angle of illumination, and they're not any more directional than that on each panel. So it's just giving you the off nadir angle essentially from that panel. But with one of them on each side, you can make a lot of inferences about which way the sun is. We could use the voltages on the panels themselves, and the only drawback that I see to that is that the electrical power system that's hooked up to the panels and using them to charge the battery, that's an off-the-shelf component as well. It has some pretty sophisticated software in there that's doing maximum power point optimization, and it's pulling power from different panels at different times. And so the voltages on the panels are not that stable as you go through the changes in how the EPS is accessing them. So it just seemed a little safer to go ahead and use the sun sensors, and they were free. So
So you use the MPP. When you do the MPP, sometimes those things are rumored to be noisy. Did you have any troubles with that? Electrically noisy.
We didn't notice anything, but we also were not looking at it with enough sophistication to see it probably if it was. It wasn't interfering as far as we could tell with any of the other systems. So yeah, it didn't cause a problem for us, but
That
maybe
was your what you labeled your EPS board. Is that the EPS board is your MPP? Yeah, you've got a lot of filtering going on that board. So David, that board has a lot of digital filtering going on. So it's probably very quiet.
Yeah, that's the thing. The thing I worry about, Rob, is that we're talking about doing radio astronomy. So any little chit chatter like that from a MPP is going to be more interesting than if we're taking photos. But you're right. The filtering.
that component is from Clyde Space in the UK, and it's been used a lot on other CubeSats. They also produce the battery that we're using, a 10 watt-hour battery. And they provide really excellent technical detail about the characteristics of both of those pieces. So some of these suppliers, like the radio, oh my goodness, we were really having to interpolate a lot about understanding how the radio works, the flight radio, and it's just kind of a one guy shop. Yeah, it's actually made up in Moorhead, at Moorhead College in Kentucky. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been there.
Yeah, they've got a great CubeSat program going up there.
Yeah, I would love to get up there and see it. I've just looked at their stuff online. It looks fantastic.
So you had a 10 watt-hour battery there.
Yeah.
That's what do you have? A couple of 18650s. What was hidden away in that package?
It is 2 flat cell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Flat cells. No, not really. Surely not. Well,
Yeah.
maybe they were packaged in steel or something then, weren't they?
Packaged between 2 composite boards. Yeah, so they're not going to swell. And then potted around the outside. And I could get you the part number. It's a standard part number for the cell itself. And then
Sound like computer batteries.
exactly, it's like a cell phone battery.
They were lithium ion, right? Do you know if they were lithium ion?
Polymer.
Lithium poly?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
They have higher leakage. Rob, don't those things have higher leakage than the?
they have temperature.
No, they don't.
problems,
It's okay.
though,
I was thinking of a
too.
different type.
Yeah.
Don't have to. So many types.
And
Lithium
I can provide
All
you,
batteries have temperature problems, but the lithium has got some pretty bad ones if you go to extreme temperatures.
You can there are chemistries that you can stabilize the lithium with, but that's for another day. Peter, you said you can supply like the info on what that battery.
absolutely, yeah, we can give you the technical documentation on every part if you want it.
Hey, doesn't anybody ever come up with a scheme to equalize the temperature? Because if you look at the radiation, the satellite's always going to average out, as long as the sides are about the same, to around room temperature or something. It's not so bad. But you have these strange things. One side is 100 C, the other side is minus something. So if the entire thing were, if you had a heat pipe situation, it would equalize things automatically. Does anyone ever come up with any scheme to do that?
I've seen examples of heat pipes installed inside, more on larger satellite buses that have really excellent stabilization. So in our case, it's just so hard to know, even to know which way it's pointing, and then to do anything about it. We could talk more about that, but that's extremely challenging, and so it's really not even worth it for us to.
A lot of the Oscar satellites have those systems in them. I've not come across a single CubeSat that goes to that level of detail.
Wow. So they've got two tubular heat pipes in it, David.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a working fluid would you use in a heat pipe in that temperature range?
Usually ammonia.
Okay. because I was thinking, mercury for high temperature and
Mercury will freeze though, Bob, and just pretty easily.
hmm?
You can freeze mercury pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, but ammonia's reasonable.
Yeah.
For that temperature range.
But you're not really having major thermal issues. You had that one time that it was facing the wrong way for a while, but the satellite didn't go dead because of that, right?
No,
So it sounds like you have good thermal management anyways.
yeah, without really, I mean, doing anything particularly about it. We got lucky, I guess. And the solar panels themselves are rated to 125 C, and we've never crossed 100. So we've still got plenty of margin there. They definitely, the efficiency goes way down when they get up into that range. And so that was our issue, is that we had 1/2 of our power system was at really low efficiency, and the other half of our power system was hardly getting used because it was never coming
In the dark.
So it was not charging the battery very fast. And if we
Yeah,
did
if you look at the SatNog's data, there was that period in August, we had the high beta angle there for 2 weeks or so, where we had the one set of panels was getting up in the 80 to 90 degrees Celsius range. And this is one of the beauties of SatNogs. You can go up the next scale and look at the core temperatures. So both the battery motherboard temperature, the battery daughter board temperature, and the EPS temperatures, they were in the 10 degrees C range.
David, what I was worried about, it's not so much that average on the battery, but there's possibly a temperature differential across it. It's going to be close to the hot side, one side of the battery. Makes me want to put them inside a silver box.
When we went down to the Marshall and met with engineers down there and the students presented, there was Jeff Farmer was his name. Dr. Farmer was telling us, have you thought about thermal management? He said, no. He said, nobody does. But this is going to be the most important thing that you have to get right. And so he actually provided us with some samples of, multi-layer film kind of material that we could put in there and insulate. And we ended up not doing that just because in the end, the build was complicated enough as it was. We kind of were hoping for the best.
We ran into these thermal problems back in the 60s. So you got 60 years of experience now in materials and thermal management, but the basics we had to solve by 1963 with the first synchronized navigation satellite. The Navy navigation satellites, they were powered, since the solar panels weren't mature technology, we powered them with a nuclear generator, a TIG, thermoelectric isotopic generator the size of a grapefruit, and 3 watts. And that thing,
Bob, can you get us one of those?
that thing hung over the Atlantic, and the Navy used it for, it was still running like 30 years later. We only thought that it would last 8 years, but all these thermal and materials problems became obvious early on, like 60 some years ago.
Yeah, we certainly couldn't have done this even probably 20 years ago or 10 years ago, because as a middle school, because we relied so much on the commercial products that have benefited from all that technology development.
But it's gotten a lot of interest and a lot of nice comments. I'd like us to continue with this topic. We have 2 program chairs. One is Dr. Don Sprong, and the other is Dr. Juan Cabajo. Both have been on. I think they're still on. So if you'd like to continue this, let me know, let them know. I think we could do that. I'd like to hear more about RamSat, a lot more details.
And we'd love to hear about TALSAT as well. So if there's a chance to get together and hear about your work, I'd personally be really excited to
Oh, yeah. You do
tune in
that.
and hear about that.
Great.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll
Yeah,
share that.
I wanted to just thank Peter and Ian and David for, I mean, very well done. I like the other David said, I got a lot of information out of this, so it was really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just to mention for all of you, putting together the meteor showers, the weather, the moon, the torrid shower, first part of November, might be a very interesting event this year. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you all for having us join you. It's a real pleasure to be able to share what we've done. That's the objective of what we're doing, is to get it out to as many people as we can, students of all ages.
Thank you very
Okay.
much. Yes.
Thank
For
you.
all of you,
Thank
for
you.
all our speakers, thank you
you.
very much.
Thank
This
you.
is very nice. Thank you.